Let's talk about the MS narrative through conventional medicine. We're told that our body is attacking ourselves. And this has to do with any autoimmune disease. And with MS, the body is attacking the myelin sheath. But let's take this a step further today. This is something I learned about in the last week, and it is mind-blowing. And I want to share it with you today. And I'm going to do more digging on this even after this podcast or YouTube channel message. And by the end of this, I hope that you will scratch your head and go into your psyche and see if this resonates with you at all. So in the lens of conventional medicine, they say that they don't know of the causes, but I pretty much know what the causes are. It's a mix of our diets, our past traumas, our lifestyle, and the environment that we live in. But on this platform, sometimes we look at the human body through a different lens. I love to ask why we have certain symptoms and why everybody is different. And today's message might answer some questions for you. So today we're going to explore a controversial and highly fascinating philosophy of German New Medicine, or GNM. So specifically, we're going to trace the steps of what this means and its founder, Dr. Reich Gerd Hammer, and how his theories connect into the most common symptoms that we have of MS. And we'll be going over some symptoms, including brain fog, numbness, slurred speech, etc. So whether you're a seeker, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, I invite you to open your mind today. So in the next few minutes, I want you to look at MS not as a system error or just a random body misfunction, but a biological response to emotional trauma. Let me explain to you what I've learned about this doctor. So this doctor was around practicing in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And he was from Germany. He was a German doctor. That explains his name, right? Dr. Hammer. And at first, he was on the very scientific and conventional medicine side until he learned a few things. So what happened during his practice? So he ended up on the oncology side of medicine and helped patients in this way in the beginning. Dr. Hammer, unfortunately, had something tragic happen in his family. His son died, unfortunately, of an accidental gunshot wound. And Dr. Hammer, as I was reading, had held his son in his arms and witnessed his death. So emotionally, this was very impactful on he and his wife. Now imagine that sheer emotional shock of watching your son die in your arms. That would impact anybody. And according to Dr. Hammer, the grief was so large that it impacted Dr. Hammer's body biologically. Just a few months after his son's death, he learned that he had testicular cancer while he was perfectly healthy before. So as an oncologist, Dr. Hammer didn't accept this as just a random mutation or bad luck. He started thinking like a scientist, but also like a grieving father. He reasoned with himself. He said, I was perfectly healthy until this tragic, emotional, and devastating shock happened. And so he said, now my reproductive organs are growing a tumor. There has to be a link. So in German New Medicine, this sudden traumatic, isolating emotional response is called DHS. And this is short for his son's name, or Dirk Hammer syndrome. So Dr. Hammer theorized that his testicular cancer was a biological manifestation of a severe loss conflict of his child. So, driven by his new hypothesis, Dr. Hammer did something radical. He began interviewing thousands of cancer patients in the clinic that he was working at in Munich. He didn't just look at their charts, he looked at their lives. So he asked them, before your diagnosis, did you go through any kind of shock or any isolating bad news or any deeply distressing shocks? Well, these results blew him away because what he found that, according to his records, 100% of his patients told him that they had some sort of distressing shock prior to their illness. And Dr. Hammer didn't stop at the interviews. He looked at their CT scans as well. He looked at the patient's brains and he noticed something very distinct and odd on these results. And what he found was very distinct circles, a multitude of circles surrounding a particular area on the brain, almost looking like a target. So these rings, which now is called hammer foci, he noticed that these circles appeared on the brain in the exact same areas that controlled the organs of where the cancer was growing. So he concluded that every disease originates from a psychological shock that simultaneously registers in three places: the psyche, the brain, and the organ. So according to GNM, what we call disease can actually be a biological response. The body isn't breaking down, it might actually, and adapt to a severe kind of trauma that took place. So how might this apply to us with multiple sclerosis? MS symptoms are tied to what Dr. Hammer called a motor conflict. So let's break this down. So let's go over some of the common MS symptoms that one might experience. So symptom number one, muscle loss or loss of motor skills. This is a big one, right? So when we're diagnosed with MS, and I know that I did, I was afraid and I was fearful that I was going to end up in a wheelchair. And I think this is the most frightening symptom to most of us. So conventional medicine says that the nerves are not conducting signals. When in your life did you feel like you couldn't escape? You felt stuck, or you were asked to take action on something and you didn't want to, or you didn't take action on something that you wanted to. So think back, does this resonate with you? So this could be maybe a toxic marriage that you can't end. Or maybe you did go through a divorce. And I'm going to tell you, I've had a couple of clients that had gone through a divorce. And then financially, they found that they couldn't get a place of their own. And so they moved in with a parent. Or they found out that they needed to take care of a parent and they moved in with that mother or father. And so in these instances, these past clients of mine did feel trapped because they told me this. And both of these clients had trouble walking. So he says the paralysis during this time is a biological attempt to stay perfectly still because escaping feels impossible. So look back and see if that resonates with anything that happened in your life. Symptom number two, numbness and tingling. And I definitely had this. This was my very first symptom. I woke up numb from the chest down. My hands were numb, and then also I had pins and needles in my feet. So I'm going to explain what he says about this conflict. He says this attributes to sensory issues of feeling abandoned. So Dr. Hammer says this feeling of numbness or tingling are sensory issues of a separation conflict, meaning that you feel separated from something or someone, or you feel abandoned. He also says that, or you might have been touched in a way that wasn't approved by you. And so when you develop numbness, it's your body's response to protecting yourself because you don't want to feel those feelings of being touched in a certain way. So this numbness or tingling makes sense to me because during this time, I was 28 years old and I was living with a roommate and I had a job, a pretty stressful retail job at the time. And I just moved from California to Colorado and I didn't have a lot of friends. I was pretty isolated. And Dr. Hammer's explanation for this makes total sense to me. So think of this symptom if you have it. Like, when did this come on, and what do you think was the initial shock that you might have experienced? Okay, symptom number 3 is optic neuritis. You could have double vision, you could have blurred vision, or a blind spot in one of your eyes. And I know that I had a blind spot in my left eye 17 years later. And so maybe you can put your finger on this. So according to Dr. Hammer, here's what he says. He says vision issues are tied to a fear in the back of the neck or a visual separation conflict. This kind of shock is something that could have happened when you did not see something coming, or the trauma of suddenly losing the sight of somebody that might have vanished from your life, or you might have the inability to see what to do or to take action on. So he says the optic nerves inflames the body and tries to adjust on what it needs to do. The eyes are trying to adjust its capacity to see the danger or to find the person that was lost. Symptom number 4, extreme fatigue. And I know for me, I had crushing fatigue. Now, Dr. Hammer actually says that fatigue is part of the healing process. He says it occurs after a self-devaluation phase or a conflict that's been resolved. So he basically says that anything that you resolve, any kind of conflict that you have, you'll go into a healing phase. So when you actually stop fighting, or when you finally escape a situation or accept it, your body forces you into a deep exhaustion phase. He says it's not a sign of getting worse. He says it's a biological mandate to lie down and rest. Okay, let's go over symptom number 5. This is loss of balance or dizziness. So let's talk about vertigo. In New German medicine, it's known as a falling conflict or loss of direction. He says the shock happens when somebody has lost their footing on a certain situation. Maybe you didn't know which way to turn, your foundation became rocked, or you've experienced a literal or metaphorical fall from grace. So he says the dizziness is the physical echo of feeling completely ungrounded. Okay, symptom number 6, brain fog. So let's look at these cognitive shifts. So in German New Medicine, this is not a loss of brain cells. This occurs, he says, when a person is dealing with multiple conflicts. Dr. Hammer called this schizophrenic constellation, or a state of mental overload. So he says when the psyche is trying to solve 2 or more massive emotional problems, the brain goes into a temporary protective state of power. It creates a mental cloud to dull the sharpness of emotional pain. So essentially, this is forcing you to slow down your thoughts and to not burn out from stress. So I know I had this, and I know why. Because getting diagnosed with MS is an emotional shock within itself. And I know my brain was reeling a couple of weeks after I was diagnosed. I had an onset list of symptoms that happened after I was diagnosed. And this makes total sense to me. Symptom number 7, slurred speech. This can be terrifying when you can't communicate. In German New Medicine, this is directly tied to a speechless conflict or a vocal motor conflict. This is the precise shock of literally being left speechless about something that happened to you. And this is where you were forced to feel silent. or unable to speak your truth. Or maybe you couldn't defend yourself or voice any kind of pain that you were going through. So this is the temporary weakness of your vocal or facial muscles. And this happens when the body internalizes the shock of, I cannot speak or I must not speak. So see if this resonates with you. Okay, the last symptom that I'm going to talk about today. And I know that there's more MS symptoms. And if you're curious about any other symptom that you might have, reach out. Say something in the comments and I'll look that up for you. But symptom 8 is sign. This is an electric shock when you tilt your head forward and you feel it throughout your whole body. And so according to German New Medicine, the symptom is linked to a central self devaluation conflict. This is a shock that shatters your self-worth, where you feel completely broken or even humiliated. And I had this, I did. And after I was diagnosed with MS, I did feel all of these things. Again, MS was the shock for me. I felt alone. I felt humiliated because I was diagnosed with this disease. I did not feel normal. You feel this. It's a sensitive tissue layer covering the bones and the spine, and it's undergoing a rapid neurological transition in order to help you repair. Okay, so let's bring this all together. Did you learn a few things today? I personally was blown out of the water when I learned this, and so much of this makes total sense to me. But you contracting MS isn't all emotional, right? It does have to do with your diet and the way you live your life and your environment and your self-care. So keep this in mind as well. So I don't want you to look at MS as the body is defective. I want you to see it as your body is responding to an unresolved emotional response. And maybe you're not resonating with anything that I'm saying, and that's okay. But a lot of this resonated for me. But I do know that past traumas for sure are a part of us getting diagnosed with MS. And I've said this before, I grew up with a narcissistic mother, and I had to heal all of those wounds as well. So healing MS isn't just a part of changing your diet, moving your body, or looking at your environment. It's looking deep inside at any mental wounds that might have been created. I want you to try to heal any of these past traumas or wounds that you have dealt with. And you can do this. Thank you for listening today, and I wish you healing in the best way possible. You'll be hearing from me or seeing me in the near future.